Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I want to welcome you all in this discussion about Greek diaspora and the startup ecosystem. It is a discussion that is organized by the Hellenic Foundation for European and Foreign Policy, by ELIAMEP, and the Southeast European Studies at Oxford, CSOX. ELIAMEP and CSOX are partners in research in the field of Greek diaspora and also migration studies. In this discussion is supported also by the Athens University of Economics and Business. And at this point, I want to welcome our guests, and I want to thank them for being here, having this discussion with us about Greek diaspora and startups ecosystem, which is very, very, after the pandemic, I dare say, it's something that young people and the Greek people are very much interested about, because it's about the economy and it's about the future. So welcome to you all, and I want to see our guest is Marina Hatsopoulos. She's board chair at Levitronix Technologies, a co-founder at Z Corporation. Good afternoon, Mrs. Hatsopoulos.
Good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me.
It's Mr. Vassilis Papakonstantinou, co-founder at MITEF Greece and Hellenic Innovation Network. Good afternoon, Mr. Papakonstantinou.
Good afternoon. Thank you for the invitation.
It's Mrs. Ioanna Sapfo Pepelasis, Professor Emeritus at the Department of Economics in the Athens University of Economics and Business. Good afternoon, Mrs. Pepelasis. And Mrs. Katerina Pramatari, Associate Professor, Department of Management, Science and Technology, Scientific Coordinator at the Athens Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation in the Athens University of Economics and Business. Good afternoon, Mrs. Pramatari.
Good afternoon. Nice to be with you today.
And I want to begin with you, Mrs. Hatsopoulos. You have to begin and tell us a little bit about what is that you are doing and how do you believe that we can, that you can coordinate as diaspora the Greek startup ecosystem. The floor is yours.
Sure, thank you. So I'm president of the Hellenic Innovation Network, which has a mission to accelerate technological innovation and entrepreneurship in Greece to world-class level by 2030 in order to fuel the economy and create jobs. So it's an outgrowth of MIT Enterprise Forum Greece, which Vassilis will discuss shortly. But it's a US-based nonprofit organization created with the support of the Consulate General of Greece in Boston in order to facilitate access to resources, partners, and best practices. So what we're doing is building a bridge between the diaspora in global tech hubs and the Greek tech community. So this whole organization is driven by an advisory group of global innovators, and we have a wide range of activities. So some of the things we do are we disseminate startup news on our website, which is hellenic.org, and we broadcast educational webcasts, which in this last season had over 33,000 views. We also organize monthly CEO group meetings where the entrepreneurs meet monthly in a safe and confidential environment to discuss common challenges, to exchange ideas and lessons learned, and to provide mutual support for each other. In the fall, we're going to resume hosting our in-person events, which we do twice a year. These are pitching and networking opportunities that educate the Greek diaspora about what's happening in the Greek startup ecosystem, and it provides Greek entrepreneurs the opportunity to pitch and network within the very rich and well-developed Boston startup ecosystem. In between, we're going to continue to host online webcast events, and we've also created an online platform to allow for virtual connections of our members in between events. So if you want to be informed about all our news and events, please register at hellenic.org, and you can become part of our community.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Hatsopoulos. And now let's go to Mr. Papakonstantinou. We'd like to hear from you also. The floor is yours.
Thank you. Again, thank you for the invitation. MIT Enterprise Forum is a non-profit organization that is part of a global network that was grown out of MIT. MIT is known for its academic rigor, but it's also very well known as the top entrepreneurial university in the world. And back in 2013, 2012, to be exact, we realized that a lot of people were talking about entrepreneurship here in Greece, but there was kind of a strange perception. So we decided that we wanted to help the local community, especially the people that they were coming out of the universities and building technology startups using their research. So we managed to convince MIT to allow us to create this hub here. And the goal was to bring some of this network and the resources it has, and of course the brand name. The goal was to import, in a sense, experience to help the local startup ecosystem that were starting to grow and achieve its full potential, helping the startups move faster through the cycle and go to the global market. So we started doing a series of events. One of the premier programs that we are still running is the MIT Enterprise Forum Startup Competition, which has been running for the past several years. And over the past 7 years, we have accelerated 180 startups from primarily tech companies, many of whom went on to raise a lot of money from local and global investors and create a lot of jobs. Next Monday, we have this year's finals. And on the day after, we will present the finalists and the winners to the community. Early on, we realized that it was important. One important aspect was to help the local community, learn what they wanted to learn to grow by bringing people from abroad. But we also realized that we had to build bridges, as Marina said, with starting with Boston, because it was, fairly easy given the presence of MIT, starting with the Greek diaspora. And back in 2016, we started having the first meetings of what it eventually turned to be the Hellenic Innovation Network. So our goal as MIT Enterprise Forum is to, let's say, grow the startups that can come out of the Greek technology ecosystem, and through the Hellenic Innovation Network to promote their presence to the global community. So this is pretty much what we're doing.
Mrs. Pepelasis, you have to open your microphone because we cannot hear you.
Ready?
Ready now, yes. We can hear you very well, thank you.
So I would like to say that the topic of this seminar is important and timely, and that we are in a critical point in international business. The increasing fluidity and the deconstruction of hierarchies in the global economy and transnationalism confer structural power to elite diaspora businessmen and managers. So my thesis today, I'll be very short, is that in the past, the diaspora was very much present in Greece. Greece is a diaspora nation since antiquity, and that today the diaspora is again present, but that it's not a power couple as it was in the past. From 1821 to 1920, on the basis of research at Athens University of Economics and Business on the startup ecosystem, we see that there is an effort of becoming a power couple, but not exactly a power couple at the moment. But since the pandemic, looking into the future, we see very strong signs of the birth of a new relationship, which will be very strong. Now, in my historical analysis, what I want to just pinpoint is that the diaspora was very present in the transfer of business institutions in Greece, like the institution, primarily the institution of the joint stock company, in bringing an entrepreneurial model to Greece, because when Greece was liberated, it was a poor Ottoman periphery. And it also was very much in the forefront of the nascent corporate sector, namely big business. It not only brought much capital to this area, but it also brought know-how. And what is very interesting is that wherever you have diaspora presence in the startups of the past, in the corporate sector, you also have international business to some extent. Or let me put it otherwise, international business would not come if the diaspora was not present. So that's what I want to say about the past, that you cannot look at Greek business history if you don't look at the diaspora. Now, concerning today, the situation is very different. Greece is a very different economy. We can talk about that later. And what we have is that during the crisis, between 2010 and 2016, we had the birth of a new ecosystem. The startup ecosystem did not exist in Greece. We are a latecomer in that area. And it was born for a number of reasons. And this ecosystem was very different from traditional business. It was internationally oriented, it was team-based and not family-based. And what is interesting is that high technology is used in the process of products. And also a large part of this is in the high-tech sector of the economy. Now, this ecosystem was born on its own without any help. It was born in spite of the difficult situation, maybe because of it. During COVID, it became, as I said, much more pronounced. And in a study that we are doing at AUEB, a running study on the charting of the ecosystem, we have found the following information, which is interesting. We have not looked at the diaspora, but we know that the diaspora is there because by looking at survival and internationalization, we see that the following, in terms of survival, that experience abroad of founders and studies abroad of founders shows that there is a higher potential for survival in the firms, in the startups. And these are indirectly linked to the diaspora ecosystem. Also, in startups where we have the presence of university professors and researchers, again, the survival probability is higher. And as we know today, a big thing is that for the first time in Greece, the universities have been started to link up with universities all over the world where there are prominent diaspora educators. So, survival is largely a function of these factors, and internationalization, internationalization is also important for survival. We see that also internationalization is related to having experience abroad and customers abroad. I would also like to mention that, in closing, that there are some startups which have their headquarters or their branches outside Greece. This was quite prominent, but after the capital controls, we go up to 2016. This fell drastically for obvious reasons. My impression is that the links with the diaspora are stronger now, and they're going to become much stronger. And I would like to say that a little over 13% of startups were established outside Greece, basically in the UK. And what we see is that the brain drain and the brain gain are present in the diaspora ecosystem very strongly, and that this tendency will continue. And where do Greeks go? Where there is already a Greek diasporic community.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Pepelasis. And now the floor is yours, Mr. Pramatari.
Thank you, Odin. Thank you, everyone. I'm happy to join this session today. I will start with a statement that I believe we all agree, although we usually tend not to agree all the time. I think we all agree that in Greece we have, Greeks have a competitive advantage, and this is the human capital. Human capital in the country, but also, and very important, human capital outside of the country, in the diaspora. And so that's why I'm really glad to participate in this session today. In our topic, the role of universities is really central. And I'm here with my capacity as scientific coordinator of representing the Center of Entrepreneurship and Innovation we have at Athens University of Economics and Business. The role of such a center is really important, and we strongly believe that there should be such a center in every university, especially here in the country. This is not still the case, but we are moving in that direction. Why is the role of these centers so important? There are many reasons I could bring up, but I would like to emphasize two of them. Universities are really where the talent is, and the creation of new startups, or the inspiration of people and the development of the right skills and mindset for the development of new startups should really have its root in the university. And this is something we have not done very successfully in the past in Greece, but now there is a great momentum in the country, and this is changing. And the role that such centers like ACEin at AUEB can play in helping people develop the right mindset, help them develop teams and become what they actually are supposed to be, the nurturing for new teams, is really important and crucial. At the same time, and this is one axis, at the same time, universities have a central role together with research centers in the development of innovation and really new research outcomes that can go out there in the market. In Greece, we are really good at developing new research, but we are still bad at taking this research to the market. A center like the one we have at Athens University of Economics and Business is thus very important to help not just new teams and new students join this path, but also researchers help them commercialize and take their research to the market. Again, following more or less a similar path. What we haven't done, and this is, so the first is already happening. The second is what is really happening now in the country with the collaboration of many research centers, many universities trying to really support this domain. With the creation of funds like Unifund, which I also represent, which was created exactly with the vision to really support not just the development of teams, but also the funding of the teams and helping them mature and take innovations to the global market. What we haven't done up to now a lot, but I am really very optimistic to see this happening now, has already started a lot more and increasing, and the seminar today is in that direction as well, is to enhance the networking of activity that is happening already in the country with the rich network of Greeks out there, with the diaspora, and the great capacity that this can create, which can really return great value to the country. So I'm really happy to contribute to the discussion today, and I look forward to sharing with you further opinions.
Thank you very much. And taking it from there, from what Ms. Pepelasis said about power couple and what Mrs. Pramatari says about enhancing it and putting it all this coupling forward, I want to ask you, Mrs. Hatsopoulos, as a diaspora entrepreneur, what do you think are the biggest challenges and constraints and opportunities in making this happening, in making diaspora and a startup connection a real success?
That's a great question. Actually, the constraints have largely been lifted in many ways. So technology is incredibly easy now, makes it very easy to communicate despite the time difference. The English language skills in Greece have improved dramatically in the last decade. So language is no longer a barrier. And also the internet has allowed Greek entrepreneurs to access all the latest information from the US. So there's much less of a cultural divide than there used to be maybe 30 years ago. One of the constraints that still exists, although to a much lesser extent, is the preconceptions from those Greeks and Greek Americans in the US based on their historical experiences with doing business in Greece from, let's say, 30 years ago. And these people may not recognize how much has changed in terms of culture, in terms of the development of the startup ecosystem in Greece, the experience level, funding levels, and the aspirations of entrepreneurs in Greece. So a continual flow of information and education in both directions is really important because, as we know, nothing stays still. It's all very fluid in both places. In terms of opportunities, I think the biggest opportunity is funding. The capital available today in the United States is absolutely astounding, but most professional investors here will only invest in companies that have a US presence. So this is something that I've tried to communicate to the startups that I work with in Greece who are waiting to get funding in order to come to the US. But really, they should be viewing it in reverse. Get to the US and you will find the funding. So the natural next step for an organization like ours, Hellenic Innovation Network, is to help companies establish a presence here. And we haven't yet done this, but we think it could have significant impact if we can help these startups to find the resources they need. So these are things like finding cheap space, access to our professional network here for funding, for hiring, legal help, accounting support, and prospective customers. For us, we're an all-volunteer organization at this point, so our own resources are limited, but it really doesn't take that much for us to provide advice and to make introductions. So we have already started to do that, especially for life science companies, which could really thrive here in Boston. That's a very natural fit. And in fact, out of Greece, there are many life sciences companies coming out.
Thank you. Well, now, Mr. Papakonstantinou, I want to ask you, what major strategies would you follow at the associational and organizational level so that you can strengthen the diaspora and Greek startup ecosystem and its network and its effects?
Well, as Marina said, one of the biggest struggles we had in the beginning was to manage expectations. A lot of people had tried to do business in the past, and many of them had failed. So when we started out, we used the brand name of MITEF, but the goal was to build the relationship, the bridges that will showcase what is really happening. So to convince the diaspora that things are really changing, and they're not really changing fast, they are just changing. And with their help, it can change faster and be more sustainable. So I think there are a lot of synergies that can take place from within these two communities. If you think about, what's the biggest problem of the startup ecosystem in many less developed countries is the flow of ideas is not that great. We have technologies, as Katerina mentioned, that they are coming out of the universities, but we don't see the application part. And the diaspora has a much better worldview sometimes, because they are plugged into their communities, and they can give this feedback. So networking events like the ones that we are organizing, either as a MIT Enterprise Forum here in Greece or as Hellenic Innovation Network in the States, are designed to bring these people together with the goal of managing expectations, vetting the situations, because a lot of people, like to talk for years without doing anything. So we try to vet both sides. We try to get startups that they are worthy for investment, and also get people on the investment side or the business side that they are actually interested in investing and not just talk, and just bring them together. If you do that, a lot of things happen. And sometimes you have to bring outsiders. When we started, when we invited Marina for the first time back in 2013, she nicely declined. But then after she saw that a lot of non-Greeks came to Greece, and they went back and told the story about what they saw, they decided to come she decided to join. And I think she's very fond of that. So, bringing people together and managing expectations is the most important part at this level. Otherwise, people get the wrong ideas, and eventually, the Greek spirited discussions heat up, and we lose sight.
Thank you. Now to you, Mrs. Pepelasis, you talked about, and of course I want to say to all of you that if someone wants to intervene, if someone wants to answer about something that the other said, of course feel free to do that. Because we're having a free discussion, I'm having some questions, but of course you can put some questions, or you can answer something that I asked someone else. Okay, now, Mrs. Pepelasis, in the beginning, you talked about history, and you talked about what went on with diaspora in the past. Can you be more specific in the comparisons? How did diaspora work then, and what can diaspora do now in this new Greek ecosystem of the startups?
Well, there's a great difference in the economy, first of all. Greece is a much more mature economy. It has gone through industrialization and now deindustrialization. It is more internationalized. We are in the EU now for decades. It is more outward looking in mentality and culture, as Marina Hatsopoulos noticed. And also Greece has more resources, human resources, than it had in the past in terms of education. And also I would like to mention the nomads, which Vassilis Papakonstantinou has written about, the new phenomenon of the nomads during COVID. And some of these nomadic people are from the diaspora. So I really think that the environment is much different, and also that the startups have no connection really with the diaspora, in the sense that diaspora held with it lots of capital. And when they create the firms in the corporate sector, they have big money behind them. Whereas the startup firms are entrepreneurial ventures in which there's very little capital in the beginning. And as I said, initially that was a very, it was a grassroots movement. And the first people to notice it were foreign correspondents and observers. Here in Greece, people really didn't give any attention in the beginning of the crisis. But there is now an amazing ecosystem of support which is growing. To mention MIT Enterprise Forum, the Hellenic Innovation Network, ACEin. And so this now gives a different, how can I say, it's a different context, whereas the diaspora just came on its own and imposed itself on the state and collaborated closely with the state. The state is present in the last year and it's moving forward. So I really believe that it's a very different story. There is some continuity, though.
Now, Mrs. Pramatari, how do you think that undergraduate and graduate students can have the opportunity to engage in startup formation? I mean, practically, is it easy to do that? It seems very, very difficult to be able to do that.
It's a great question, and I really like it. And in 2010, I will tell you, when I talk at the amphitheater, no one wants to take this message, and everyone wanted to become a public employee. And this situation has changed so much, so dramatically now. And I think it's a great timing, and there is a great momentum currently in the country. Yes, can you hear me? Okay, yes. Okay, there is a great timing and momentum currently in the country, saying that, yeah, okay, sorry, apologies. And because the most important of all, people want to follow this path.
We can hear you. Can you hear us, Mrs. Pramatari? You can hear us? You put mute. I don't know why. Are you still with us? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can. Yes, apologies. I had a slight technical problem. May I take this question immediately after? Yes.
Okay, you can take it immediately after. And Mrs. Pepelasis, I want to go back to you again, because I want to ask you, discussing all that, and then we will hear what Mrs. Pramatari will say to us about the students. But how can it be maximally beneficial to the Greek economy? How can this connection between diaspora and the startups be beneficial? I mean, how can this money stay in Greece? That is what I mean, because yes. we heard what Mrs. Hatsopoulos said about having the funding if they put their businesses in Boston. How can we have the money and the businesses stay in Greece?
Well, that's both questions are exciting, and the second one is it's a hard question to answer. But my feeling, and this is my personal feeling, is that what needs to be done is that startups that go completely abroad, like we have InstaShop, the recent example of InstaShop, which was actually operating outside Greece It was purchased by a big corporation outside Greece. And when I saw it, I said, okay, what does this have to do with the Greek ecosystem? To my pleasure, I read that InstaShop is coming to Greece. It will operate in Greece, and also that it will set up, I think, an incubator, or it will help other startups or do research on that. So in a way, it's giving back. What I'm concerned is that the startup ecosystem does not become a small enclave of the economy, but that it becomes the enclave from which the new revolution will begin in Greece. It was a hidden revolution up to now, and now it should become the mainstream of Greek business. So the one way is those who go abroad and who stay abroad to bring back, those who buy out, who after a few years sell their companies, exit, as we say, that they bring their capital and do research here and help other startups like Linardatou is doing. So there are ways to circumvent this. But let me just say, and this is my personal opinion, again, from our research at the Department of Economics at AUEB, Greece is a country of small business. Our culture is small entrepreneurship. And to be frank, even in the States and everywhere, the mainstay of the economies are small, medium businesses. So we should nourish this and not try to completely erase it. And creating a creative startup ecosystem, which also one day will become, some companies will become unicorns, but others can grow and they can be internationalized, become global multinationals, specialized in specific markets abroad, or they can have as their basic customer the local market. This was very difficult during the crisis, but now slowly it may become feasible, hopefully. So I hope I've answered your question. There are ways.
That can be done, although it seems
can be
difficult.
Done.
Yes,
it can be done. We can have two startup ecosystems. One which is based towards selling only abroad and then maybe being transplanted abroad, and then the other which is home-based. It's not impossible.
Yes, of course you may. Yes.
Well, if I may add, one thing that we tend to forget in these discussions about technology startups, and the questions where the money goes and where the money comes, I'll just mention two fun facts. The first one is that Boston and Israel, they have a bilateral relationship that brings $8 billion to the state of Massachusetts every year because of this collaboration they have between Massachusetts-based Israeli companies. So this is something that we can take advantage in, and as Marina said, especially in the life science sector. The other thing, which is even more important, is that although, as Ioanna said, we tend to have small businesses, we are not looking at the primary example how to grow the technology startup ecosystem, which is the shipping industry. Shipping and technology startups are very much alike. They operate in a global market. They have their offices here. Usually they don't have any kind of relationships or any economic activity except of employing people and maybe doing secondary investment. And, a lot of the things that happened in shipping were able because these people love to live in Greece, not to compete in Greece. So I think there are existing examples that we can take advantage, and there are also tools that we can take advantage to keep the value.
Okay, that will be my next question to all of you about the policies that we can take. But before that, I want us to hear Ms. Pramatari to answer me the question about the students and how easy it is for them to begin to start a startup. And also, Ms. Pramatari, if the pandemic has helped, because with the pandemic, we saw the Greek economy, the Greek economy stopped because it is based on tourism, it is based on food, on things that with the pandemic they stopped. So has that made a difference also in the university, in the way that the students think about their future?
Okay, so apologies for the technical issues before, but I address both questions now. As you asked, what is different now versus what it was before? One great difference is that people, especially students, young people, and the best of them, the talented, the really talented ones, want to follow this path. So this is a new change, and we are really happy to see that. The fact they want to do that doesn't mean that they still have the right skills and mindset. So we still need to work and support the creation of teams, their path to the market, the validation, and not just for students, but also for researchers. And I want to stress that as well. So on one hand, we have a new tendency, a new a new tendency, let's say, in that direction, positive mindset. On the other, we need to support and help them develop the skills. In that second area, we now have much more mature situation in the country with incubators, acceleration programs, competitions. Vassilis with the MIT Enterprise Forum has done a great job in that field. Marina has also just by existing and doing the bridge with Diaspora and the people in US has contributed greatly in that, but also with students. And so the ecosystem helping these people that really want to go in that direction is now much more mature and really adds value. The third thing that has happened is that we have, for the first time, so many startups that have been funded by funds. Equifund has done had a great contribution, in my opinion, in that direction. It's the first time in the country that we have something like 100 startups at the, and I don't count many other of them. I only count the 100 startups that have been funded by the 4 funds of the Equifund Innovation Window, for example. And we have, for the same time, a critical mass of startups in that direction. Coming back to your question, how COVID and whether it has contributed positively or negatively in that direction, my feeling and looking at the results after all is that while in other countries there might have been more negative, there are obviously positive and negative impacts out of this situation, but in Greece specifically, we had the following characteristic. Greek startups, especially those who got funded, have demonstrated great resilience. And in general, the Greek startup ecosystem, I think, has the higher resilience compared to many other startup ecosystems because of the crisis, because of the limited funding, because of the difficult situation. And if you manage to do something successfully in Greece, that's the motto. You can succeed everywhere. That's what we try to, we keep saying sometimes. So the Greek startup ecosystem has high resilience. COVID situation really gave room, if you want, to those teams with great resilience to demonstrate their capability. I've seen many teams, some of them funded by Unifund, that in a month's time, they changed their business model. They generated new revenue streams because of COVID, despite COVID, or thanks to COVID. And now the same startup ecosystem is much stronger than it was a year back. When we get out of this situation and we do again the comparison between the Greek startup ecosystem and other startup ecosystems, I think we will be in a better situation. And it's not just science, the results are already there. So that's why, and I will conclude with that, I really, and I strongly believe that there is a great momentum currently in the country, and there's a lot of work that has been done in that direction by many different stakeholders over the last few years, and we all see that the whole ecosystem is moving to a new level, and we'll be happy to see that happening in the years forward.
Well, Mrs. Hatsopoulos, we heard what Mr. Papakonstantinou said about Tel Aviv and Boston and how closely they work together. So I want to ask you, could there be some policy interventions so that that could happen between Boston, let's say, and Athens? What I mean is, can the Greek government show to the American people and to diaspora, to the diaspora in the United States, that Greek economy has changed, that Greece has changed, and so they can trust the Greek system after all now, and there maybe COVID has played a positive role because of the vaccination system, because of what we did with the reforms. They were very, we had reforms in this 1.5 years because of COVID, but otherwise we wouldn't have them in such a short time. So do you believe that something can be done in a policy level to help?
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I have to say myself, I finally got registered on gov.gr, and it's so impressive. Like, this is it's like a sea change. So the Greek government has done amazing things. They've already put in place tax incentives for angel investors, and that's a great start. One area of resistance from U.S. investors is the judicial and legal framework in Greece, which is very slow and also encompasses an ever-changing landscape. So more stable legislation modeled after the U.S. would help promote this relationship. For example, limiting individual liability and having more startup-friendly employment terms. But more specifically, a law explicitly supporting equity crowdfunding could be hugely impactful. So I believe that there are many in the US diaspora that would very happily sprinkle micro investments of, let's say, $1,000 to $25,000 in numerous startups, if there were a very simple, no friction way to do that. Right now, what keeps people from doing that is not the $1,000 or the $25,000. It's just the paperwork. Like, who wants to deal with the hassle? So the Greek government has already taken great strides to shift the narrative, to show that they're supporting startups, that they are encouraged, they're appreciated. And so I think, already the framework has been laid, but I think the government can go further with something like equity crowdfunding.
Mr. Papakonstantinou, do you want to add something to what Mr. Hatsopoulos said?
Well, a few years back when we were starting discussing all these things with Marina and the rest of the team, we were just praying that the government will stay out of the way. And of course, we didn't get our wish, but they intervened in a positive way and made a lot of things better. But coming back to the Israeli example, I don't think that the Israelis managed to build necessarily the startup ecosystem they have just because there were policies. I think in the beginning, most of the companies were incorporated abroad, and eventually when the government realized that they were losing money, they started creating these incentives to bring them back. So, I'm not sure whether, of course, what Marina said about the judicial system is important, but I think it all boils down to trying to engage the diaspora. We would not have Marina here if we had not asked her to join, if she was not challenged, because she thought, if the Israelis can do that, we can do that. And of course, if there were not good investment opportunities. And sometimes these things are getting lost in the translation. So I think, policies would be super, modeling a lot of the stuff based on what has happened in the shipping industry. The shipping industry came back in the 70s, and they came from all around the world. And because of what they know, Law 89 companies, we have what we have here in Piraeus. So they, tax incentives can be modeled around that, but eventually the people. And it is very encouraging that over the past year, I keep getting calls from people abroad that I have never met in order to ask me what I think about the ecosystem and how they can help. So more than the policies themselves is, the connections between the people and the goodwill that has been built from all the people that involved over the past years that propel the whole thing forward.
Ms. Pepelasis, you wanted to add something, yes?
Yes, I would like to add the following. First of all, regarding policy, I agree with everything that has been said, but also I believe that there should be more funded research in order to understand better the diaspora and homeland connection. And this is something which is missing, really. Also, I'd like to add that during COVID, we had an interesting development from research that I have done during COVID, but it's not published yet. And it is that there was a shift of startups towards digitalization. They went digital earlier than they were expecting to go. Those who were able to go digital survived. Those many who were not able to become digital collapsed or are in a bad situation. So though the ecosystem thrived during COVID, as it did also elsewhere, parentheses, the issue is that it's changing in nature. And what we see, which is very interesting during COVID, is a return to nature, a return to green entrepreneurship or an empowerment of green entrepreneurship. And also there are lots of firms, lots of startups now, I mean, I'm impressed, that are trying to help agricultural production become more efficient. So there's more a turn towards high technology and process in sectors that we consider traditional.
Mr. Pepelasis, is there a mapping of a research, I can say mapping of the startups ecosystem? Do we know numbers? Do we know the people that have created them? Do we have that kind of information? I mean, are they created by students in the Greek universities? Are they created by students of foreign universities that come to Greece and build a startup, or they build it in London and they come back to Greece?
It's a combination of all. It's a mixture of all. It's a very complex. It's a mosaic. We cannot say that it's one group only. The startup ecosystem now is easy to measure because of Elevate Greece, and it's on the internet, and one can go in and see the database they have, the entries for new startups or older startups are asking for money. So now this is my dream and vision, to be able to do research on this. I mean, I've started collecting material with my team, but we're still in the beginning. So yes, we do know. They say it's around 2,000 to 4,000 startups, but I can't swear that this is correct.
So, Mrs. Pramatari, is also, do you speak with the foreign universities and with the Greek students that study in other universities and in other countries, either in France or in the United Kingdom or in Germany? Is there interconnection between the universities in getting knowledge, in giving knowledge, and in doing research about the startups? And creating startups, of course.
Yes, because these are two different topics, research on startups and creation of startups. And yes, there are networks, there is collaboration that is starting. For example, as a university, we collaborate with 20 other university incubators in Europe, in the US and elsewhere as part of an alliance where we create joint startups, or we support let's say, travel and communication of startups. For example, tomorrow we have such an event, but this is still limited. I think where we stand now is where we try to do all that much more systematically, not just connecting students in different universities. But I think if we look back over the last few years, what has happened, we now have many examples, some successful examples. We have our first exits in the country, and we have many people who really look in that direction. What we need to do in the following years is to do that much more systematically, to have the ecosystem around the universities and the research centers, where centers like ACEin are not the exception, but are the rule, where we help support students and researchers develop the mindset and the skills. Then outside of this, to have let's say the rest of the ecosystem required with acceleration, incubation, funding, to help the companies reach to a level when they can really do what Marina said before, establish something in US and move to another country and start doing business in other countries, especially in US, where we have a lot of diaspora, but also in other continents. And I think this is what we are going to see in the following years. I think, I will say it again, I believe we have so great human capital out there. I think we are all proud of our diaspora as Greeks, but I believe that the networking and gaining the trust of these people is what is the most important thing we have to do ahead. If we look at Israel, it's a country with similar population. It's a country with similar research output. I think even Greeks are slightly better as scientists in the research they develop. We have people with talent, resilience, and in general, high intellectual capacity. What Israelis have done more, they've started the journey 2 decades ago, at least, and they have worked so much closer with their diaspora. I think if there is a message out of the event today, I think that would be the clear message. I think it's a real must of what we have to do, and trust is the right keyword that we have to build. And we're in that direction, hopefully.
So, Mrs. Hatsopoulos, if someone wanted, if a student, if a postgraduate wanted to come to the United States to build the startup there, so that all the opportunities for him or her would be open about funding. The Greek diaspora, how would the Greek diaspora react and how would it help? You said a few things in your beginning statement, but if you could elaborate a little bit, because I think that people that are watching us would like to know that. Yeah, sure. I mean, what happens with the network is it really builds on itself. So you just kind of need a way in, an initial start. So, for example, if you go to our website, hellenic.org, and you register, you can find people, you can filter to find people who are in your particular area and start to reach out to them. And these are all people who want to help. They want to get connected. And but then, you know, once you get plugged into one or two organizations, universities and research centers are a great place to start. There are events happening all the time. They're very open. They're sharing information. They're sharing connections. But then once you get plugged in, you know, here in Boston before COVID, there was an event happening literally every single day. You could go to a different event and network with people in the startup ecosystem, depending on what area interests you. So it's more a question of, you know, how do you get that first in? And I recommend our website, but also the universities are a great way. Ms. Papakonstantinou, your advice from your point of view, from the Greek point of view?
Well, when we were growing up at the Athens University, Technical University of Athens, we were not, the idea of networking had a negative connotation. Like, everybody was network and meant that they had an uncle that they could, you know, help them navigate. The idea of networking is going into these events, you know, listening to people talking and try to learn from them, not to impose, you know, your whatever ideas or just show off. The more you are willing to learn, the more people would be willing to listen to you as well and try to help you. And the other thing is you have to ask for help. You know, nobody is willing to give you any kind of help unless they know about it, and the easiest way to know about it is just asking them. So as a young student, the thing I would have done differently was, you know, to network like this much earlier and enjoy the benefits of, you know, meeting all these great people and learning from their example, get motivated and you know, solving problems. You know, I'm an engineer. You know, the way I see things is there are problems and there are solutions. So listening to people, getting into discussions, exchanging views, not being afraid to say what you think and support it, that will create a debate. And then the student will come much stronger on the other side.
Mr. Pepelasis, is it after all a power couple? You have to open your microphone. If you can hear me, you have to open your microphone.
It is a power couple in the making. It has a great future, and thanks to people like Marina Hatsopoulos, Vassilis Papakonstantinou, and Katerina Pramatari, it's taking off, and many others. And what impresses me is grassroots movements from young people, like Startup Universe. I don't know if it will succeed, but it connects people, young people who want to make startups that live all over the world. So it's a Greek Startup Universe, or there are other initiatives which are amazing. And I'm very, how can I say, touched as a Greek and as an economic historian, business historian, to see this evolution. Greece has a new face in the world. And the startup ecosystem is at the center of that new phase.
Well, we only have a couple of minutes left, and so I would like for every one of you to say a few words, a few last words, if you wish. Mrs. Hatsopoulos.
Well, thank you so much for having me here today and for engaging in this conversation. I think there's huge untapped potential in the diaspora, and as was touched upon during the conversation today, Israel is a great model. And I just want to clarify my point earlier about having a U.S. presence. That does not mean, you know, everything, all the value moves to the U.S. Absolutely not. What it means is it promotes employment opportunities for the Greeks in Greece with a company that might have its headquarters or its market-facing operations in the U.S., but continues to have a development team in Greece. And the CEO, you know, lives with one foot here and one foot there. The Israelis have done this with great value creation. It can be done. And both countries share this sense that when people leave, they want to go back. They don't, it's not a one-way ticket. Greeks, when they leave Greece, they love Greece, they miss Greece, and they want to have that connection with Greece. So I think there's a tremendous opportunity to have these organizations that are hybrid.
Mr. Papakonstantinou?
Well, I think that we had a great discussion, and it's very important that these kind of discussions get to this level. One of the things that we have to look at is beyond the diaspora itself. You know, things that have happened over the past year made a lot of Greeks decide to come over here, but it also the things drove a lot of non-Greeks to come to Athens, and some of them came here because they could afford or they wanted to work from home. But these opportunity may dry sooner than later because the companies want people to come back. So one of the things that we may start thinking is how we can convince these people to, or give them excuse to stay longer by giving them reasons to start something of a legal entity of their companies. And again, coming to the shipping industry, it happened like that back in the 70s. And using this example, not to just drive back a lot of the Greeks or the Greek diaspora, but also people from abroad, because, you know, the Israel is a great example, but non-Israelis are difficult to go there. This is not the case in Greece. We are at the center of East and West. We are part of the European Union. We have all the things that are interesting. And, you know, if you listen to people like Nico Garibaldi from Pfizer, they will tell you all the reasons that drove Pfizer to come to Greece. There's no reason that other companies like that will come to Greece. And then it will also help the students of Katerina because they will be trained at the job and realize the opportunities they have to solve real problems. So, you know, we just have to, you know, to be creative as we discussed in the past. So,
Mrs. Pramatari?
I'll build on what Marina and Vassilis said, and I'll use the same words, but that there is a huge untapped potential, but on the side of students and researchers in Greece. Because what we see now as results of the Greek startup ecosystem is really in the beginning, is the effort of people who have worked in really very difficult and harsh conditions over the past years during the crisis with limited funding. Imagine if we can mobilize more funding. Now that we have a much stronger infrastructure to support these people, much more will for them there, you can imagine how much untapped potential there is. And all we have to do is to do it in the right way, in a systematic way, help people build the skills and the mindset and network, and magic will come.
Ms. Pepelasis?
Well,
magic will
this
come.
has been a very enjoyable discussion. And what I would like to just add is that the diaspora is acting, and I believe it will act more in the future, as a gateway for international business to come more strongly to Greece. Because there have been decades when international business was not welcome in Greece, but now the stronger diaspora presence may be very helpful. And of course, I agree with everyone that the educational resources of Greeks have improved, have become very strong. Greece is a hub of knowledge. And this has led to foreign companies coming and establishing research centers here. And I think this indicates where we're heading for. Thank you again.
And hopefully, and with the recovery fund, we can make the necessary reforms, as Mrs. Hatsopoulos mentioned, and to our judiciary system and wherever else we really need these reforms. I want to thank you very much for this discussion. Thank you very much. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you all.
Thank you. All the best. All the best to everyone.